You went from jumping over folk, dunking over folk, taking off from the free throw line to doing some Steph Curry stuff because you can't sustain the impact anymore. Right? It's too heavy on the spine. For you, what has healing looked like in your 30s versus your 20s?
For me, in my 20s, definitely healing. I struggled a lot with the healing process, and I probably I can say for myself, emotionally immature. I didn't have the tools to handle certain things. I feel like that even without the tools in my 30s, there's just things that I just I'm a lot more calm.
You didn't think I'd be here waiting up all night, up all night. I'm here to tell you something. There ain't another love that is gonna hold you down.
Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the CVMK show, because it is what it is. I'm your host, Cody Kelly. Look, I had to wear the special suit for you because it was chest day and I feel pumped. Look, we have an amazing, exciting episode. We're going to talk about marriage in your 30s versus marriage in your 20s. This is a kingdom conversation, but it's gonna go there. I'm super excited. I got my wife on this episode. I don't always get a chance to get her on the episode. So it's gonna be an amazing episode. But I want to thank the fans. Without you, we can do nothing. Without the Lord, really, we can do nothing. But without you, you make this thing really go. We appreciate you. Keep staying connected with us. Follow us on the gram. Follow us on the gram at CVMK_global. It is what it is _show, CVMK33, TikTok, CVMK Global. Go to the website, www.cvmkglobal.store, where all the best supplements are. When we return, we will go into the difference between marriage in your 30s versus marriage in your 20s after this quick break. Hey, bro, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
On tonight, I should say. It was super late recording. First of all, thank you for being on. I wanted to get the best guest, right? Somebody who I knew could honestly answer these questions and would give a full, transparent, a thorough analysis on where we're going. So you're in your 30s, right? Late 30s, right? Getting closer to 40. We've been married now going on 10 years. And there's a difference between, expectations, functionality in your 30s versus in your 20s. Let's start here. What has been the biggest change, you think, between your 30s and your 20s?
The biggest change has been, of course, maturity. Like from my 20s, I am a definitely different person than I am in my 30s, maturity-wise. More wise.
How so?
How so? Everything. I don't think the same way I did in my 20s now that I do in my 30s. I don't do the same things that I did in my 20s and my 30s.
So you're saying you were immature in your 20s?
Very.
So you said the biggest thing is maturity, right? I think maturity is the logic of application, or the wisdom of application between knowing what to do, when to do it, and why you're doing it, and then how to handle what is presented in front of you. I think that is maturity, or as it unfolds. So let's go down here, right? Let's talk about like just the steps in it. So we got married, you know, your 20s. What did you think marriage was going to be like in your 20s?
Well, in my 20s, I had a weird. I don't think I was looking to be married in my 20s, but first of all, I wasn't thinking about marriage in my 20s. I actually was thinking about pursuing a business, and I was very selfish and wasn't looking long term marriage in my 20s. But I was happy that I did get married in my 20s.
From a, let's say here, you were married by 27, right? So uh, you were married in your 20s. Let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's see. We're gonna have to go bit by bit upon this one to pry information out of you. We talk about expectations and then reality. Uh, what was your physical expectation of yourself? Let's start here. How did you view yourself, your body image of self in your 20s versus your 30s?
Well, of course, in your 20s, I was very much more confident. I was very smaller. I was size 9 in my 20s versus 30s. I mean, the weight doesn't come off as easy for me as it did in my 20s. So, as far as weight wise and confidence, I think I was more confident in my 20s than I am in my 30s.
So that's crazy. So I will say one of the biggest changes is there's a physiological adaptation. Um, the weight is different in your 30s. I think it still comes off. It's just not as, like at 20 you could do like that and then disappear. In your 30s is like just kind of sits there. You gotta eat right, you gotta maneuver, you gotta stretch, you gotta sauna, you gotta cryotherapy, you gotta do everything under the sun to start really creating transformation. Because there's just a drop of hormonal production, right? What about for me? What was your expectation from me physically in my 20s versus in my 30s?
My expectations for you in the 20s, uh, I gave a lot of grace because we were young. I think in your 20s, we were trying to figure out life. So there was a lot of grace in the 20s.
But I'm saying physical, not like
Like, as far,
expectation overall. Yeah, I said physical.
like, as far as your looks,
We're sticking on body. Obviously, looks is a part of body. Physical.
I didn't really have expectations. I don't know. I don't judge you by the expectations of how I felt about you versus in the 20s versus 30s. My
Well,
expectations.
I'll start here because we're pulling teeth. It seems like so.
Didn't have
I
any expectations for you.
I think for myself, in my 20s, there was a certain um, size, and even though I'm technically smaller than I was, particularly in my later 20s, uh, now than I am then, there was just a different maneuverability. I think when we first got married, I was barely 200 pounds, right? I didn't have any hardly muscle, I just hooped, work, hoop, pretty much the lifestyle of all of them that are in their 20s. So, and then, when you get 30s, I think I got more into the bodybuilding aspect of it and really adding, muscle and size. But I will say that your expectations for at least for men, for me, is to be a high performer, right? So we talk about physically, You know, there were things that like I ignored in my 20s because I thought I could still be a high performer, and I thought that it wasn't affecting me. That in my 30s I can't play with, right? Like I know we joked and said like, you know, I would eat like ribs, chicken, and fries all in one meal. You know, I wouldn't attempt that in a week now. You know, I would say on a cheat day it would just be one of the three. So, you know, there's definitely that push. But there is some nuances physiologically. I think for my 30s, I expect me to be at my strongest. Where in my 20s, I knew I wasn't going to be at my physical strongest, right? So anytime I'm lifting, there's that. But in my 20s, I expected to be faster. In my 30s, I'm not as fast, right? So some of it is just is you know is as I say is time and chance. But I do think that from a physiological standpoint, I would say I expect more out of my body in my 30s than I did in my 20s. And the reason why is because there's more investment in it. Whereas my 20s, it was just natural, just, you know, bow. But now in my 30s, I'm like, okay, you know, the investment in the health and the wealth and the wellness space and all that, you know, there has to be a push. Look, after we return, we're going to get into finances, some of the expectations of your 20s versus your 30s. We'll return from a quick word from our sponsors.
It's the end of a good arm workout with your boy Malcolm here, man. If you love superpower, you gotta get with the warrior thirst, man. Shit takes it to a whole new level. Pump insane energy throughout the whole workout. Get yours, warrior thirst.
Y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store, where it goes down. As you saw in the video, that is Warrior Thirst. Need y'all to go there. I'm telling you, it takes the workout to the next level. www.cvmkglobal.store. Okay, so physiological shift now to economical. In my 20s, I was just broke. I didn't expect anything. I was mad. I did expect things. I expected a lot of things, actually. It just didn't really click like that. And then it really started clicking until really got into, you know, my kind of late 20s. And it was like, oh, but it was like, man, them early and mid 20s. Whoo, child. Now versus my 30s, I expect trajectory shifts, right? Like, you know, made this, now it's time for this. It scales of economy, right? That is really kind of different, I think, than, you know, your 20s. Because a lot of times in your 20s, you're sitting there, you're focused on trying to find your identity. Who am I in the workspace? Who am I creatively, right? How do I differentiate myself from the next person? On top of that, we're still trying to, you know, intern or hone your skill set or go to grad school or do all this to really have or carve out a niche for yourself. So your 20s, I feel like you're forming an identity versus your 30s, you're acting in the identity, right? So I would say like now I'm really, obviously, like anybody probably wants more, but I'm at peace with how it has developed, if that makes sense, right? So for you, economically, what has been your focus between your 20s and your 30s?
Well, for me, my focus has changed and shifted a lot. In my 20s, I was a very hard worker. Um, I did a lot of sacrifices. I had a lot of ambitions. I was afforded a lot in my 20s. Um, then I got to my 30s and it kind of like shifted for me as a slower pace. Like in my 20s, I felt like I was doing a lot. I got a lot of favor early. And then now in my 30s, I'm kind of shifting, but in a good way.
What is that shift? Go into detail.
So some of the shifts are I've always been a entrepreneur, working with um, owners. In my 20s, working directly with people, versus now in my 30s, my husband and I, we founded our company. So that that was the biggest shift.
That's true. That's true. I think that's true. All right. So, what do you think that? Do you think that women that are not married, particularly younger women, are influenced by society and the fact of where their partner, where their husband should be economically, right? Like, do you think that there's a negative influence that is totally distorting truth and distorting the realities of life, love, and kingdom marriage?
Yes, I believe that stems from social media. Social media have, I feel like, altered everybody's opinion or expectations on how we should, we should have versus what is realistically what who should be where, when, and even at what age. I feel like social media have altered and shifted everybody's opinions and who should economically be here, because we're looking at uh, celebrity expectations versus reality expectations.
What there? Well, there has to be a floor, right? And I totally agree with you. I think we are looking at falsified and exacerbated and exaggerated celebrity quote unquote expectations versus the norm, right? And the standard of deviation is too far. um, if you were advising a younger woman and you said, well, you want him to be working, obviously, but what income level, like what range of income, or maybe there isn't a range of income, what would you say to that younger woman?
I would say it depends on your level of income. You can't offer what you don't have to offer. Like if you, I feel like if you are, not trying to be funny, if you're working at McDonald's and you expect him to be you expect him to date you and he's a doctor. I mean, that's kind of a high expectation for a McDonald worker.
Well, no offense to McDonald's workers, but what do you think? What that's interesting. What do you say to the she got her own, right? What about the woman that is making a high income salary and is educated and has all these things going for her, and she says, "I need somebody on my level." Uh, do you think that it has to be parallel, or does it have to be congruent? Like, what would you say?
I would say I understand her expectation if she worked hard and she earned a high wage income. I mean, usually people want to match that income. But I'm not against if she wants to lower, because the average income levels for everybody is just different.
What would So how much is lowering? So let's say she makes 150 bands. Would 150 bands can 150 bands marry a man that only makes 50 bands?
Yes, to each his own. It's up to her. I don't know. I wouldn't say that she's downgrading if she gets somebody that's 50 grand. It depends on what she's looking for and what he has to offer. There's other things other than money that can make anybody happy. So
All right, let's go. Let's say it's more than money. All right, that's cool. That's cool. Um can can he um should he also have his, because a lot of times I feel like, I don't want to say men marry down, but if traditionally men make more money, right? Traditionally, for a lot of the wrong reasons, but let's just say they do, right? And he makes 150 bands. it's going to be kind of harder to find a woman that makes the same amount, right? Just like in the other, shoe. So would it be apropos for him to marry a woman that has, only makes 50 bands?
Like I said before, like it's up to the individual. I wouldn't say like that. I don't feel like economically. I feel like people have their expectations. Yes, should he find a woman that can match that? If he can, that's great. But also, if she does not make that, I don't think he, depending on that type of woman, he would have a problem giving or leading, taking care of her per se, if she does not match his income.
What do you think? So where does I guess when I'm trying to build the case for the 20s versus 30s is, when does the light bulb go off that it's not that you're aiming too high, is that you're ignoring what is in front of you in order to obtain this, right? So I think like in the 20s, we're really lofty and at the same time naive, right? And then 30s, we become more aware and at the same time, practical. When does that shift start happening?
So, can you go into detail, because there's different shifts in different economic places for everybody. Like certain people come, it depends on that household. Like some people come from, some people. I'll give you an example. Some people go the non-traditional. Some people go the traditional route of going to college, finishing, going the degree route. That route, people make great money. Sometimes they don't. Also, if you go to non-traditional, I know a lot of women that do hair that makes more money than people that teach. So it just all depends on what that profession is and how they earn their income. Because there's plenty of ways that you can earn income, and just because they work as a hairdresser does not mean that, and they didn't decide to go to school, does not mean that they're going to be economically low income.
That's true. Well, let's talk about the shift, and let's talk about how it manifests itself in relationships after a quick word from our sponsor.
There's a hero in all of us waiting to be unleashed. All it takes is just that one last push. Activate the hero within with CVMK Global Supplements. All natural, steroid-free, designed to enhance performance, build muscle, and increase energy. You are unstoppable. You can do this. Become your own hero at www.cvmkglobal.store.
Y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store. I'm telling you, it goes down with the best supplements, fitness apparel, fitness, health, performance supplements. If you don't know, get it today. www.cvmkglobal.store. All right, so relationships, I think, is one of the biggest shifts. In your 20s, you have your boys or you have your friends you made from college. And then you have, your friend girls. For guys, it's a little different because I always say it's like the roster that you just, having whatever with. So, but obviously you get married and that dynamic definitely changes. So you just got your boys, right? And your boys are cool, but marriage brings about a pivoting. And then you realize you can't be as close as you would like to individuals that are not in the same covenant, right? Because they have a different focus, right? So you start surrounding yourself with people that really want your relationship to go further, faster, and develop and grow, and that you can be all that you can be. Not that you lose sight of your friends. It's just that your friends go through a reevaluation, right? And it's like, oh man, I need, this now. And unfortunately, I don't know if you're able to be a part of that. And I want you to be a part of that. And it's difficult because you can find yourself on an island. At least that's what it feels like sometimes, right? So, for your friends, what has been the biggest change between your 20s and your 30s, friends? Like, what do you look for now in friendship in your 30s that you didn't do in your 20s?
I look for loyalty a little bit more. It's kind of the same that I look for in my 20s. Just I know it's a lot harder in your 30s than your 20s to find solid. Well, for me at least, it's been harder to find solid friendships just because my life is just different. Like a lot more busier, and my um, being married has shifted a lot as well.
So you're a lot busier. But you mentioned loyalty. So in your 20s, it wasn't a loyalty factor, it was more of a what?
Well, it's more, I mean, it was still a loyalty factor, but it was when you're single, you have more freedom to do whatever you want to do versus when you get married, you got to think about your partner. And sometimes that puts your friendship, it feels like you're putting that loyalty to the background, but you're really not.
So
You're
the
married.
so the question is, how can you demand or request loyalty, but you don't have the space to give loyalty? So who should they be loyal to? Are you talking about to you or to the validity of your marriage? I mean, what loyalty?
Well, what I'm saying is that, like, if sometimes loyalty, people feel that you're not being loyal when you can't show up to everything. And I feel like sometimes that transition in marriage is not that you're not being supportive, but some things when you get busy and you get married, you just there's certain sacrifices you just have to make that you didn't have to make or think twice about when you were single.
True. So I totally agree that particularly in your 30s, people look at attendance more, your attendance record, as a sign of faith, commitment, love, um, patriotism, whatever. But it's like attendance becomes everything
Hmm.
versus the fact that you can't really make everything and that they themselves don't make everything. And how can attendance be the barometer? It should be a part of the gauge, right? It should be a metric, but it should not be the metric, right? And it's hard because it's like, well, okay, I don't mind, going to, 1-year-olds, whatever. Even though the 1-year-old is not going to be, cognizant of the fact that I was there. But I'm really doing it for you. But then when you have your event, whatever it is, then it's like I expect, I can make it and listen to Baby Shark, you can listen to whatever, right? So it's I think it's that. I also think that the loyalty is more of you want your life partners, your journey people, your journey, obviously your journeymen, to be on the journey, right? So if I'm going north, I need you to go north with me and not ask to go northeast. All
Right.
right. And I think the hard thing is that a lot of people either don't see it the way that you see it, and it's more of a visionary thing, right? And if you have two visions, you have division, and that creates separation. Or they don't want to see, and then therefore they're blind, willfully or circumstantially, but nevertheless, without optical range. And that creates frustration because if we're without optical range, we can't agree upon anything. Nothing that truly matters. Right. So it is this weird thing that happens in your 30s versus your 20s. It's more like, man, you like, you like Hillsong, I like Hillsong, or you like Drake, I like Kendrick, or I like Drake, so or I like Kendrick, you like Kendrick. It's not as deep. It's more backgroundish. When you're 30s, it becomes more about aligning with purpose partners or partners of purpose, purpose partners. That sounds funny. And people that are not in that flow of partnering with your purpose create unnecessary roadblocks, and they become a deterrent to your progress. And it's like, oh, I got to shift you now because what I really want is my purpose, and I want you to be happy for my purpose so that we can be purposeful. That's not always the case, but that's definitely always the aim, right? So I get it. I totally get it. I think that the friendship aspect changes so heavily because the other thing is too, you start healing from your wounds in your 30s. And we're going to talk about what that healing looks like after this break, but you start forgiving people, but then you start also learning how to move forward. So we'll talk about what healing is like in your 30s versus your 20s after a word from our sponsors. Unfortunately, every day is not a day of spring. Life is filled with toxic temptations designed to entice you, to destroy you, to manipulate you, to poison you, to harm you, to cancel you, and to make you sick. And at CVMK, we've designed supplements so that you can fight back. You can be who you were destined to be. You can unleash the hero within with our signature supplement line. Go to www.cvmkglobal.store. Y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store, where it goes down. I'm telling you, you want to improve your health, you want to improve your mind, your physique. We have all the proteins, the creatines, the BCAAs you need. Shout out, y'all, to the new Vanilla Whey, V-Whey. If you haven't tried it, try it. V-Whey, the Vanilla Whey protein isolate, only at www.cvmkglobal.store. Healing is a real thing, and it occurs. Healing in your 20s is put a Band-Aid on it, wrap it up, put some ice. It's got to be seriously broken for them to even consider surgery. And even if it is severely damaged, because you're young, over time it can heal. But when you get to your 30s and you realize time is of the essence, it's more about pain management and truly fixing it before it becomes chronic, and then creating a new normal. That's the difference, the new normal. In your 20s, you could be offended, friend disappoints you, and you might have it out. You might say unpleasant words. You might go a month, 2 months, 3 months without speaking. But the reality is you'll be back. There's a reconnection. In your 30s, you're not as sharp, but you're more impactful. So instead of, screw you, it's more like, pause. I ignored when you did blah, 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 blah. And you start throwing haymakers versus these wild, furious jabs. And then you say, but it's okay. What did Tabitha Brown be like, beloved? So The pivot is real because you start looking for a new normal. You realize that part of you has been affected and has been damaged. And what you're looking for is I can't continue with this limp, but I do recognize I may never jump as high. I need to develop a jump shot. So the relationships you went from, jumping over folk, dunking over folk, taking off the free throw line to doing some Steph Curry stuff because you can't sustain the impact anymore. Right? It's too heavy on the spine. For you, what has healing looked like in your 30s versus your 20s?
For me, in my 20s, definitely healing. I struggled a lot with the healing process, and I probably I can say for myself, emotionally immature. I didn't have the tools to handle certain things. I feel like that even without the tools in my 30s, there's just things that I just I'm a lot more calm. I'm not a jumper to I pick my bat. I'm good at picking a battle now, if that makes sense.
So you're picking a battle, but how? How do you go about? What is the criteria? You're a lot more calm. Calm being you're a lot more emotionally balanced. I mean, what makes you
Being a
decide?
lot more emotionally balanced because I put in a lot of work that I didn't put in my 20s, like going to counseling, therapy, and a lot of stuff. I had a lot of chance to, make sound decisions versus just emotional immaturity decisions just because somebody said something like more pouty. I think when you're younger, you make a little bit more pouty decisions because you don't take the time to think about what you do or say. Versus in your 30s, you're kind of more. It's not a pouty thing; it's more of a maturity thing. It's more. Uh, Let me think about what you stated before I'm going to react to what you said.
So you mentioned poutiness versus substance. I think what you're trying to aim at substance.
Yes.
How do you determine what is an appropriate response in this stage of life?
Um, listening, hearing the other person out before commenting. I think when you listen for understanding and not for just just commenting, um, it's easier to interpret what the other person is saying. Um, I think that also comes, uh, fortunately, with my profession. For me, it kind of comes with my profession though, so I have to listen a lot before I can speak because a lot of times in my profession, even I work with all ages and groups, so even people that I feel that are older are sometimes emotionally immature, which is kind of sad.
So for you, and you said you did the work. Um, how does the work start? You talked about counseling, you talked about other things. How does the work start? How does one begin to do the work?
Well, the work starts within you. You got to look at yourself. You got to dive in deep into who you are as a person. And through counseling, they make counseling is good because it makes you look at yourself versus pointing the blame at other people. When you can see uh, yourself first, it's easy to make better judgments when you can judge yourself first versus judging others. Because anybody can point a finger, but when you can point the finger back to yourself, like, oh, it was me that caused this to happen, versus pointing the blame to somebody else for a certain situation, it just kind of mirrors everything for you to look back at yourself to fix you, which fixes your relationships in general.
I like it. I like it. I like it. I'll let you off the hook with that one. Look, when we get back, I'm gonna go into evaluations. We talk about necessary evaluations when we return after this quick, and I do mean quick, break.
I literally just tried the best pre-workout on the planet. With Superpower pre-workout, you have increased focus and a power boost every single time you work out. It's not only packed with 225 milligrams of caffeine, but it also has citrulline and creatine. It's insane how much energy and focus I had during my workouts. If you're ready to take your workouts to the next level, then ditch your current pre-workout and get the Superpower pre-workout to be your own hero.
Y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store. That was Superpower. Look, Superpower is a next level. That's when you're really trying to do the thing. Superpower is that thing. But you're only gonna get Superpower if you go to www.cvmkglobal.store. All right. It's interesting. On the job, you get an annual performance review. We have a metric for everything. There's a metric for business. There's tools that measure, engagement, conversion, you name it, attention, click-through rate, cost per click, you name it, we can measure it. But the areas that mean the most, we never actually take real stock. We never truly evaluate, right? So we're going to evaluate. You're going to evaluate me, and I'm going to evaluate you, because this is what we do, because it is what it is on the CVMK show. So we'll start here. We talked about, improve. You won't have to go super detail. We'll talk about evaluation. So we'll do these categories. We'll call it emotional development. So ED for the first one, from 20s to 30s. We'll go on the second one, physical development, 20s to 30s. Then we're going to go into sexual development, 20s to 30s. And then fourth one, spiritual development, 20s to 30s. And then the fifth one, we'll go into relationship with others development, 20s to 30s. All right. So I will evaluate you on this. I'll go first. So emotional development, ED. All right. Way better. A whole lot, way better between 20s and 30s. Night and day better. Because you were terrible, but you needed some fixing. You have put in work, put in a lot of work. I give you credit for that. Definitely better in your 30s, right? 20s, you kind of Barbie dollish, but 30s definitely have improved. Physical development. You've lost a lot of weight. I give it to you. Down 30 pounds this year. You turned it around. Obviously, like you said, met you at a size 9, and there was evolution in that, but you've really gotten back on track. I'm super excited. You've been amazing, particularly recently. So I'm going to give you a tie. I'm going to give you a tie on that one. All right. I'll give you a tie. No one's winning that decade. Sexual development. I'm gonna give you better in your 30s. I'm gonna give you better in your 30s. You better in your 30s. 20s is a bit more freaky, but in your 30s, you are. Spiritual development. Your spiritual development has been an amazing growth. Obviously, 30s dominating it. I think the amount of fasting, the amount of praying, seeking the Lord, the spiritual development in Christ, the desire for ministry, desire for mentoring, the desire for evangelism, the desire for impacting others, taking others under your wing. I would say it's head and shoulders above 20s. And then your relationship development. This is where it gets interesting. When I first met you, I felt like you had 1,000 friends. And then I realized that aren't, because you had 1,000 cousins and family members. But as you get older, you start realizing that a lot of this is you, but isn't you. So there's a phase where really, like, yeah, you can step on more, but then there's a phase where you realize, like, it's not you, right? I think that your 30s, you've been better. I think that what happens is you start to see the truth in your 20s, your late 20s, and then you're trying to figure out how to respond to that truth. So I'll give you the advantage in your 30s, because now what you're looking for is who loves April Rakisha for April Rakisha. Not what April Rakisha can do, but who really wants to be my friend, who wants to stay, consistent, throughout the whole thing, right? So that's my evaluation. Your turn.
All right. Well, since you were asking the questions, you gotta ask me the questions.
You should have wrote them down. You got to pay attention. And that's one thing you lacking. That's what you lacking. Talking about listening. You're not listening. The first category is emotional development.
So if I was to evaluate you on emotional development, you are definitely a lot better in your 30s than you were in your 20s. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
All right, physical development.
Physical development. In your 20s, to me, physically, because you were younger, you were more, a little bit more toned. In your 20s, but of course, in your 30s, but you've been kind of back, like it's kind of been like in your 20s and 30s, kind of like almost a little bit, I won't say maintaining, but you got back in your 30s, kind of where you were in your 20s. But
man, he said tone. I mean, I was just.
But in your 20s, you were more focused on. You had such a goal of a certain size that you really wanted to get to.
I was saying for our wedding. I was saying it was more.
No, 30. That was for our wedding. No, because of our wedding, you definitely got to the size that I felt like you were like you were super happy at your wedding weight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to be that small again. You know what it is? It would be nice to be 195. I guess I was probably 197. But I didn't have the chest, the arms, the back. I mean, like I look good in the tux, but it was real just, I don't know if I want to look like that anymore.
But I do like in your 30s better than 20s though.
I appreciate that. All right, sexual development. Sexually, SD. I'm better in my 30s, babe. Don't be a hater.
You are, but you weren't bad in your 20s either, so like
I'm Superman. I'm Superman, so that's gonna be what it is. Spiritual development.
There's definitely been a great. It's exciting for me to see the evolution of Cody spiritually, because I remember your start as far as preaching. I felt like you were dynamic even earlier. A lot of people didn't get a chance to see you in St. Louis like I did. the on fire, the presence, the gifts. You always had this charisma of preaching that I just loved about you. Like, but it's gotten. I've seen the transition from 20s to 30s, and it's definitely a more tailored and thought out. And I love where you are today. Like, it's very packaged, well packaged presentation versus your 20s when you first started out and you were gaining experience. So it's great to see both sides, and I love where you are today.
I like that. That was a nice compliment. All right, relationship development. Last one.
Relationship development, relationship wise, you've been great you've been great as relationship wise. I feel like
the RD is for, I think the RD is for friends. Or not
right.
friends, but for not us, but others.
What do you mean?
So like just relationships with others, RD.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like for you,
okay.
I feel like you're that's what I was trying to get to. For you, you are, to me, I feel like you that friend that reaches out, checks on everybody I see. And of course I'm gonna evaluate you because I see you. I'm not able to see everybody else, but I do see you as that friend that reaches out to everybody, checks on everybody, the well-being of everybody. You're a good friend. You're a very good friend. And then you have other friends. You've changed a lot in your friendships. A lot of your friendships have changed, but I do like the friends you have now. You still have the brotherhood, which is commendable. Some of your friendships have lasted the test of time, which is a good judge of your character. So
that's sweet. All right. Well, I'll let you off the hook. Look, y'all, this has been, we want to do this from time to time because we want you to have this conversation, right? It's not just us. We want this to inspire something between you and your partner, right? So I need you to do a few things. Hit like, share, subscribe. YouTube, CVMK. It is what it is _show on the gram. CVMK _global. CVMK global on TikTok. Or is it Globe? Yeah. Fanbase CVMK. Where it goes down. www.cvmkglobal.store. Shout out to my wife. Thank you for being on here. Shout out to you for watching and listening. And until next time, guys. Thanks.
If you think exercise alone got me looking like this, well, think again. CVMK Global Super Thick got me right. I'm obsessed, and yeah, I won't stop talking about it because it helped me grow in all the right places. Its creatine provides a fast and reliable way to increase your power, size, and shape, and it's scientifically proven to help you reach your physical goals in a safe, controlled manner. So if you want to increase muscle size, pump, and thickness in your muscle groups, you need Super Thick.